I was like telling Jim McGilvery, like, I don't really play P-Brock. That's like really boring.
As a
And it's like,
9-year-old kid.
yeah, but they just, I already, maybe I was 10. I don't know. No, I think I was like 9.
Oh, yeah,
My
if you were
mom,
10, I'm not impressed, actually.
yeah.
Hey, Andrew.
Hey, welcome
Uh,
back.
yeah.
How many
Feel
weeks has it been that we've been apart?
I think we've been apart for, like, 6 weeks.
I have my calendar open, so 1 week of no recording, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just going with clicks on the calendar. 6. So yeah, so 6 weeks off.
But nobody would know if we didn't mention it, right?
Well,
That's
it's
the
funny
secret
though.
sauce.
It's funny. There is one important clue which I think merits mention, which is your incredible party in the back haircut.
Oh, did you notice?
Yeah, I noticed. Man, a lot can change. You and your hairstyles and beard styles change rapidly.
You know, my wife tells me it's a feature of having something akin to ADHD or something that I can't make it a quarter without changing something about my appearance. But I'd never really noticed it until we started doing these recording sessions, and now
Yeah.
we have these thumbnails on YouTube. So if I ever scroll the dojo page to like remember something, it's like, what?
For me, with the exception of like the occasional cameo of some flannel, like I'm almost identical every week. And then
Black t-shirt,
you're like
tight
wildly
haircut.
different. You're like wildly different every week. So
Yeah, I
so
like
anyway,
to.
I like that about you, Jim. I wouldn't
Oh,
change
thanks.
that for anything.
Well, my deep dark secret is that there's actually just 3 or 4 clones of me, and we're just taking turns.
Here's one thing I'd like to figure out how to do an in-person episode with you and I this year.
That'd be
That
fun.
that's one of my bagpipe New Year's resolutions.
We should do one of those gags where we start the episode like with 2 laptops open facing apart from each other, so it looks like we're in 2 different places, you know?
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
there's like a technical glitch or something. It's like, oh, I can't figure out Andrew, how do I get this drop down thing? And you go, oh, just a sec. And then you come walking out of your frame into my frame, and we're in the same place.
Yeah. How far are you from some of those Utah Highland games? Like, because sometimes Jeff Mann is like, we want to get you out to judge, and
There you go.
I can never quite do it, but maybe we need to make that happen.
Yeah, the bigger competition one up in Salt Lake is an hour from my house.
Right.
And then there's Scott's on the Rocks down south, which is kind of cool down in Moab with the red rock and stuff. That's like 3 hours from my house, I think.
Huh.
And there's a
Interesting.
small games in Payson, a smaller one that's closer, like 20 minutes from my house.
I think I've heard of Payson.
Payson, Utah, dude. You might have heard
Yeah.
of Payson, Arizona. That's maybe the more famous of the 2 Paysons.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
Mm.
I don't know how that came up, but anyway, what are we gonna do? We're gonna grab a little mailbag.
Grab a little mailbag, a mail of bag grab. Grab
Now,
bag of mail.
this is from someone, but I think we should leave their identity a secret for this because
That's a good idea.
it's a difficult topic.
Yes. And then maybe they're not necessarily saying this about an instructor that they've had, but they probably are. So yeah, good idea. Good call there. So the mailbag from an anonymous listener. Thank you for writing in, anonymous listener. Here's what they write in. They say, what if your instructor doesn't make it fun or they're overly picky about perfection?
Yeah. There you go. Good question.
Yeah. Like many things that we talk about, I immediately have feelings of my own like worry about what I've put students through in the past. I might have overemphasized things like it has to be a heavy D throw or something like that, and made them trip over that as they were just trying to play some music, you know, and held them back in a way.
Yeah.
The excuses in my head are always like, oh, well, if you're not doing it perfectly, you're going to like develop bad habits. And so slow down there, Bucky, you know, you can't play the whole song until you play it perfectly. And this ties into the problem where like I used to make people always play all the embellishments, you know, I wouldn't let them take them out, stuff like that.
It kind of I mean, like I don't really know how I'm going to answer this question, but one of the things that pops into my mind is just the overall experience of parenting. And then Jim, you've parented hundreds of children at this point.
Thousands at this point.
So you know this as well. But it's like, as a parent, I kind of struggle with this as well. It's like, you want your child to grow up and to be successful and to be able to do things and everything. But then like, there's maybe not. But for me, I'm like, wait, I kind of went over the top there, right? Where I like pushed too hard in some area or aspect. and like it's gone way over and the kid is no longer having fun, and you risk, like, let's say you're trying to teach them how to play baseball or something, which by the way, I'm not, just random thing that comes up. Like, or you maybe as a bagpiping parent, you're horsing around on the practice channel with your kids or something. But then it's like, if you go over the top and you get too serious about it and suddenly the kid's not having fun anymore, well, like what tends to happen? Like the kid tends to not want to do it anymore.
Yeah. Which is definitely not what you want.
Which is definitely not what you want. And then, so like, how would you avoid that? You know, I think the thing is you have to be willing and able and ready to keep it fun for the kid and not be too serious about it. Agree? It might change though. Like it might change. Like, let's say the kid gets super into piping and then, 3 or 4 years down the road, they're in grade 2 solos and their idea of fun is having you grill them on their technique.
Yeah, they might be in a headspace where they want that criticism. They want to have their weaknesses pointed out so they can work on them.
For sure. I mean, like, obviously, by the time I was 12 or 13, I mean, that's what I did for fun, is I got up there and I played high-level solos, and the judges are going to give you last if it's not good, and that's kind of intense, right?
Yeah, I feel like I can see this playing out with my own kids already. I've joked often with my wife and mother-in-law and others that I worry all the time that I am the after-school Disney movie special sports dad.
Yeah.
But instead of being like, no, you can't play violin, you got to play football, I'm just saying, no, you can't do anything but play violin. I'm just the sports dad, but my sports are music. And so I'm like putting my kids through the paces with art. And it's like, I have this crisis within myself all the time where it's like, am I equipping them with tools with which they can do art, or am I making them hate art?
Yeah.
Am I making them hate music? So now all their thoughts about music are going to be, Dad used to make me play so many scales, or something like that.
Yeah. And so like, where's the balance there? And I feel like in the world of parenting, I feel like you see the complete continuum of balance. Like you have the super intense parents, like, where like there's this one kid in my kids' school. They did like this big hour-long run last year. And there's this one kid that literally doubled the number of laps every other kid ran.
Holy.
And this was in kindergarten.
Wow. That kid's going places.
And I was kind of keeping an eye out for the parents, and like, yeah, it was like definitely a super we will do sports vibe I was getting. And maybe not, maybe the kid's just like a super outlier athletically or something. But then you also see where it's like all fun and no business. And then you're like, oh my God. Like that's just what's going through my mind. So, and then you see the broad continuum. And so anyway, my point is, and again, maybe I'm just making that up and everything is great, but like something tells me somewhere you got to try to find the balance. Like, I suppose parent to child is sort of like a teacher. It's similar to a teacher-student relationship.
In so many ways. Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So anyway, let's bring this back over to this example where presumably there's a piper and they're going to get instruction from a teacher, right? Is it the teacher's job? And this is actually a question I don't know the answer. Is it the teacher's job to balance the work to fun ratio correctly to keep the student kind of having fun, but also tending to business at the same time?
That's interesting. So maybe there's more than one way to approach this, and maybe that's one really good way is to pose that question. Maybe the teacher's job is to give you business, and it's up to you to make it into something fun. Maybe we flip that on ourselves as the students there.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm not sure
I'm
I
not
agree
saying
with
that is that way. Yeah.
My favorite teachers over the years are the ones that just made it a ton of fun. But sometimes it was just like I remember Norman Gillis, Alistair Gillis's dad, used to come to the summer schools and we used to spend weeks. And like his class was not complicated. I mean, he brought out a stack of music and he's like, what do you think about this tune? And we're like, sure. And then it's like, make 5 photocopies of that. And then he'd hand it out. And then we got to the end of that one and he's like, want to do another one? And then we would just do another one. But that seemed like a lot of fun. And you're kind of, we were with our friends and granted, we were a class that we were sort of like the advanced class. So we were able to just crank through tunes. And then at the end of the class, he'd be like, cool, get 3 or 4 of those on the pipes for tomorrow. and that was just great. But it was not deep and meaningful. It doesn't seem like he was carefully crafting a fun experience. It just was fun. But we were also getting a lot of business done too. I mean, we were sitting there learning tunes and getting feedback from Norman Gillis. I mean,
Yeah,
you're kind of getting it all in there.
that's going to be fun. Yeah.
But yeah, so it just kind of is fun. Now, is that me, the student, crafting what was there into what's fun for me? Or did the teacher have the intuition of what was fun and was presenting like a really cool product?
That's an interesting question, because maybe I can imagine a hypothetical situation. Maybe if I had been there with you, I would have been like, like I definitely would have been behind the advanced class, and so maybe it would have been so overwhelming for me. It's like all we do is get out more new music and blast through it, and that wouldn't be fun for me.
Exactly. Now, meanwhile, I don't know. I actually don't really know. I was sort of like I'm sort of like a bagpiping super freak maybe, but I never really did an intermediate class.
You don't know what that's like.
So
you don't know what the normal class is like.
Yeah, like I remember my first day at piping school, I was just I was like 9 years old or something, and they're like, well, I guess we're sticking this kid in the advanced class. I was like telling Jim McGillivray, like, I don't really play P-Brock. That's like really boring.
As a 9-year-old kid.
Yeah. But they just, I already, maybe I was 10. I don't know. No, I think I was like 9.
Oh yeah. If you were 10, I'm not impressed actually.
Yeah. Well, my mom came in and, she helped administer a little bit at the Invermark schools and then kept an eye on me, and I just got thrown in the mix. But yeah, I just remember I was in class with a lot of great pipers, like Sarah Ford and Vicki McGinnis and some of these like really awesome players. But I ended up just kind of being in there and doing my best, and like totally didn't fit in because I had to learn P-Brock fast, basically, is what happened.
Well, I'm just enjoying the fact that Andrew Douglas doesn't know what a normal class is like.
Yeah, so but anyway, so that's a little embarrassing, right? But like, did Norman change what he did when the class was more intermediate or basic? I would assume so.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm exploring these ideas because, fun is absolutely essential to the learning process. If you're not having fun, you shouldn't be doing it, right?
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, like what else are we doing this for?
Yeah, and then sometimes like, is it fun? Is it fun to like, really be taken through your paces and to have the hard facts delivered to you? It's like, that might not be fun, but maybe you have an inherent understanding that, that little bit of hard times is going to greatly increase the amount of fun that you're able to have across the long term. I think we sort of instinctually understand that to a certain degree. And so we're willing to put ourselves through that, but maybe that's not norm. Maybe that's not as normal as I think it is. I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe one factor at play here could be, and again, like this, not delivering the final answer here, but like maybe one possible angle to come at it from would be something like a really good instructor is going to be good at like reading the room, whether that's one student or a bunch of students, and adapting the material appropriately for that student. And so maybe what this instructor is doing from this anonymous person who wrote in works really well for some of their students, and now they're just doing it for all of their students, and it's apparently not working well for some of the students. And so maybe that's part of the like the back and forth between instructor and instructed is reading the room.
Yep, totally. That makes a lot of sense. And I think depending on who you teach, you probably have to be able to adjust what you're doing. Yes. So anyway,
I don't think I'm so not like the parent to deliver like advice, nor music instruction advice. My life is a series of realizing how badly I've done things in the past. But
that's heavy, Jim. That's heavy.
It's just true. But my oldest son is a teenager now, barely, and he is reaching a point where like I can at this point describe to him like, okay, see that thing you're doing on the piano that is really fun for you, that you're really enjoying? Do you remember when, that whatever it is that he's doing, transposition or whatever it is, broken chords, something. Do you remember when you hated that? Because that was really hard, because it was new. And so trying to get him to tie together, I did something that was hard, that was unfamiliar, that I didn't like, but because I did it, now I'm having way more fun than I would have if I hadn't gone through that. And
Yes.
I'm not saying I figured out how to get that through to him, but I think part of it is that now he's old enough to put those things together. And maybe that's one thing to keep in mind when talking about like the parent-child relationship and the teacher-student relationship.
Mhm.
Teaching adults or learning as an adult can be very different than learning as a child. I don't think it's always different in every way,
Yeah.
but I think it
But
can
everybody's
be.
different though, because as an adult, right? It's like some of the stuff you might do with a kid to keep it fun. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, let's just horse around for half of our lesson
Mhm.
because kids think that's fun
Mm.
and just do goofy things, which by the way, they might not actually be goofy, right?
Yeah, they
Like,
could be
but
going
they might
real.
seem goofy. They might seem goofy or whatever.
Mhm.
Or maybe a narrow-minded adult learner would find it dumb,
Mm.
but it's actually really clever teaching. However, you get the narrow-minded adult in there for a lesson, right? And maybe what you're doing seems stupid to them and like a waste of their money and their time, right? They have a
Yes.
they
Yeah.
have a different outlook on how things should look.
Mm.
And so maybe it's just not fun because they're narrow-minded.
Mm.
Ooh, yeah. So what if, going back to the original question, which was, Jim, read it back to me.
What if your instructor doesn't make it fun or is overly picky about perfection?
Good. So is it not fun because your instructor's making it not fun, or are you a bot?
Let's get real.
Yeah. By the way, we might need to censor that out. But
Yeah, I forget which countries that's a swear word in. We'll just play it safe.
just play it safe. Yeah, exactly. So that's question number one. So is it not fun because your instructor's not fun, or because you are, how do I say that without swearing? Or because you're just being kind of a annoying, narrow-minded person,
Hmm. Hmm. It's a
right?
question always worth asking, right?
Yeah.
Be self-reflective a bit. Yeah.
And maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. Okay. But like, so the first thing I would do is which, this is part of what makes me such an amazing guy, Jim. First thing I
Yeah.
would do is I would self-reflect before insisting that what the instructor is doing is really not fun.
Hmm.
I would consider that maybe it's my own approach. And then the other part of the question was that they're just so focused on perfection,
Yeah.
right? So is your instructor over-focused on perfection, or are you just being a
Just really want to make me hit that bleep button a few more times in the edit afterward.
Yeah, I'm just really kind of going for it here. But yeah, so like, now I'll try and do it the right way. The instructor is over focused on perfection, or you're not getting it.
Hmm.
And you need those fundamentals to be correct. And the instructor knows this before you're going to be able to pass go and collect $200, right?
Hmm.
It's like, oh, you've got 14 crossing noises here. Well, bro, we have to fix that before we move on. Or I think maybe for me, it's like, well, we got to do the rhythm. We got to get the rhythm correct, or else all the fancy embellishments that you'd like to achieve are not going to go well. So is the instructor too focused on perfection, or are you just not getting it? And again, maybe the truth is in the middle somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
I think that it's very rare for an instructor to actually be a strong enough, an experienced enough player and teacher to have the arsenal to craft every message like exactly to that individual student's needs. It's very rare, right? Because you don't just have to be good at piping. You also, to your earlier point, you'd have to be really good at reading the room, or really good at understanding what really makes your student tick.
Yeah. And even if you're really good at that, at figuring that out about people, if this is a weekly 30-minute lesson, it might take a really long time to get that read on a person and start figuring out what works well for them.
By the way, is this pointing to why it's so effective for parents to teach their kids bagpipes?
Because you know that kid so well.
Yeah, like my dad taught me how to play, and obviously things went really well. But is part of it because like my dad really got me because, he spent literally 24 hours a day with me for the first 8 years. And then he's like, all right, well, if I'm going to teach this kid how to play the scale, we're going to have to take a unique approach. You know what I'm saying,
that's
though?
an interesting thought, yeah.
Yeah, like I do think there's really something to that. Well, it's because you have that, because you have all the bonus material that really you kind of need to successfully teach someone. It's tough because you don't know, because there's more to it. It's like you don't just need to teach them how to do the thing well. You also have to know what kind of things make them uncomfortable, what kind of things make them thrive, or, and then wait for it, drum roll, please, what makes the student feel like they're having fun?
Yeah.
Because there's a wide variety of things.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah. And of course, we're not trying to discourage anybody from writing into the show or anything like that. Not saying that this anonymous person is the problem in this situation. Just a valuable thing to explore these possible angles to take. And if we took an angle too from like the instructor making an adjustment perspective, I wonder if a possible element here too would be that it's important for instructors, if they're kind of like guides guiding their students through this experience. Maybe one thing that could make the business side of learning bagpipes fun, even when it's just a grind, just business and hard, is to connect that hard work with what it's going to like make possible.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if an instructor maybe often gets kind of blinders on and goes, okay, now we're going to do this embellishment, and now we're going to do this embellishment,
Yeah.
now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do this. And we end up doing all the work, and the instructor has in mind, like, and if you do all this, then someday you'll have fun.
Yeah.
But the student is on the journey still, like, hasn't got there yet. So it's like, why am I just, like, this is miserable, you know? You got to give them a glimpse every once in a while. Like, this is why you're doing it.
Immersion is the secret ingredient, right?
Ah, good point.
You know, like, immersion is the 20% of stuff that you could do that's going to give you 80% of the results. And in this case, the results aren't necessarily playing F doublings and never missing them, right? The result that immersion gives you is even more important than that. It's like the understanding that, this is probably why we don't want to have crossing noises, because we want to be able to do that kind of fun, awesome stuff someday.
Mm.
You know, it's like so important. And do instructors kind of miss that? For sure. I mean, if I teach a private lesson, how much time do I set aside for immersion? Well, if it's a 1 hour lesson and you do immersion for 20 minutes, which by the way, probably is at least that much would be cool, but then you don't have that much time left. So you kind of skip that and you go straight to the F doublings. And then, are we maybe missing the point there too?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the great teachers do that so naturally.
Mm.
Like, Donald Lindsay comes to mind. I mean, so much immersion and like, hey, listen to this. And it's why we did 2 hour lessons instead of 1 hour.
Mm.
Because that chit-chatty bit stuff at the beginning of the lesson, it might not seem like you're doing a lot, but you're doing a lot.
Mm.
And it's like, hey, listen to this recording I just heard, blah, blah, blah. Frank Zappa. It's like, why do we listen to Frank Zappa during my lesson? Well.
Did you really?
Oh, for sure.
That's a cool lesson. Anytime you get out the
stuff.
Zappa, that's going to be good.
All sorts of weird stuff. But yeah, like, I mean, and was that fun? Yeah, it was fun. And then like, but does it get you in the mood to play music? Sure. And does it connect you to the fact or the hopeful fact that what we're doing on the bagpipes is not that far removed from what Zappa's doing?
I love that idea.
When he puts a penguin in bondage.
Man, we were working on some vehicles the other day at work, and there's a guy there whose name is Joe. We can jam in Joe's garage was in my head all day long. Right away, yeah.
Yeah. So
I do wonder too, though, like so many, and I'm not saying this is the case for the person who wrote in, but as I try to remember, I cast my mind back, like to students that I've taught in a one-on-one situation, as well as in like the class format at the band's class.
Cast your mind back, Jim.
I'm casting it back here. It's, I don't want to say surprising.
That was my best. That was my best Wayne's World reference.
Oh, and I'm going to save that. I know it's going to be useful for a lot of episodes. So.
All right. After all of the purposeful censoring moments I've put into this episode.
Right, yeah.
I probably deserve that.
Yeah, we need that one.
Anyway, back to your point.
Well, I don't want to say it's surprising in a condescending way, but like it does stand out to me like that most students, and I'm not saying that this is the case for the person who wrote in, but it seems like most students don't even know where to go to get the good bagpipes for immersion, And so something like a listening list or YouTube links or something like that might be a really important part of instruction in order to help them to have that immersion experience. Because if one is left to wander in the World Wide Web, like what are the chances of coming across really good quality bagpipe content?
The world is struggling right now. It's the same thing with like the news, right? Like where do you go to get the good news, Jim? Well, in the old
Beats
days,
me.
well, and it wasn't necessarily that the news was better in the old days. Like we think it wasn't actually. And we think it was like unbiased. Bro, it wasn't unbiased back in the day. But there was a benefit somehow to only having a couple of potential sources, and then you just follow those sources, and that's how you were going to get it.
Yeah.
Whereas now there's infinite. And we have the same problem with bagpipe immersion. Like when I was a kid, we used to just manually subscribe to all of the new CDs that came out. And
Interesting
every
way
time,
of putting it. I see what you're saying.
like every time a new CD came out, Jim Clough, who was our pipe major, every time we'd go to band practice, me or my dad would ask Jim, like, "Hey, what's new? Like, what's come out recently?" And he was like a supplies salesman, and so he would always, he would always have the new thing. He would always have it, and so it's like, well, not much is new, although there's this like Gordon Duncan thing. You want to try that? And then like,
you guys heard of this guy Gordon Duncan?
And then me and my dad were like, sure. And then, by the way, in the original days, it was cassette tapes. I don't remember if we had like the Just for Seamus and cassette or CD, or we may have even had it as both. But anyway, you kind of pop it in on the way home from band and you're listening to it and you're like, whoa, what is that? I remember the first time we heard Hellbound Train on the Victoria Police Uphold the Right cassette. And it was kind of like, did that just actually happen? Like, what is that? But anyway, it's like, we had these things. And then, of course, every October-ish, the World's CD would come out, which was huge.
Yeah.
Basically every year from 1992 through 2003. That sounds about right. So for 10 years, every year we'd get that CD, and then it would just get played on repeat every time we drove around to do something. But it was easier then. Like that's what you were supposed to listen to back then.
Yeah.
To immerse yourself. By the way, the first one I ever listened to was 78th Fraser's Live in Ireland. But as a young kid, I thought the applause in between each track was super annoying. So I never got through it.
Yeah.
So actually my first real one that I got through was Simon Fraser's Silver Anniversary Tribute album. And only later did I return to Live in Ireland and realize, oh, the applause actually isn't that bad. And, blah, 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 pretty exciting. And so those were like my first two, Live in Ireland and Silver Anniversary Tribute, I think. I remember those. There was actually a little bit before that where my dad took old LPs and turned them into like homemade cassettes. And, you get the Scott and the Brave and whatever.
I used to play that game myself, just with other records and radio as well. Just have the cassette up and ready and hit record right at the right time.
The other thing too, if you did that now, I just feel like our minds are so distracted. And pointing back towards is it distracted in a bad way? Not necessarily. But like, if you try to listen to an album now, how long before you're just scrolling something on your phone? And your attention is now not actually on the music that you're listening to.
Yeah.
Even on YouTube. And then meanwhile, we can watch YouTube and we can do a lot of bagpipe immersion on YouTube, but you go to YouTube and then all over YouTube, there's distracting things that you might want to watch instead. So how often do you actually listen to a performance and actually give it thought? And then maybe you listen to it again because you thought it was really cool. And maybe the answer is that the things that should be getting our attention are getting our attention because they're actually more interesting. And so maybe we're better off in the long run. I'm not trying to be old Nan Douglas here, but yeah. So anyway, I don't even know how I got on that tangent. Oh, I guess my thought was that like in the old days, how to immerse yourself maybe was a little bit more straightforward. Yeah. Like it would be more straightforward back in the day to catch up on the news. It's like now it's a little bit interesting. I mean, now it's just the news isn't really the news. It's just like battle of dim-witted ideologues, or something, or quick-wit. Maybe they're quick-witted ideologues, but they're trying to slip stuff past us, so they dumb it down. I don't know. Tough to say.
But it seems to me like maybe this matters in this scenario where, instruction doesn't seem fun. If I, as the instructor, am thinking, am not even pausing to consider whether or not my student will understand why I'm putting them through the paces on this boring thing. If I'm just in the like an unexamined assumption that they hear good bagpipes all the time, so they understand why I'm focusing on rhythm or on this doubling or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They might not actually know where the real world application of this thing we're working on is, And so
Yeah.
like pointing toward, and this is what we're now working on this because that's going to make it so you can do that. That might be the thing that makes the work fun, is to have that glimpse of where you're going.
Yes.
Maybe. But
So
another possibility, this person
yes.
who wrote in, here's another possibility. They might have a bad instructor. Maybe they need a different instructor.
Could be. I guess the main thing, I think, to start to bring this to some sort of conclusive thought is like, is it is it an instructor problem or a you problem? As a grown person, I start by assuming I'm to blame first. Like, that's my default. It's like, oh, I didn't have much fun there. All right, well, was it actually maybe my fault? Like, do I actually need to just suck it up and do the things that I'm being told? And once I do that, it'll end up being tons of fun. Man, I've had so many experiences in my life like that, where I just sucked it up and quit my. And in the very short run, I wasn't having a ton of fun. But then by the end of it, you're having a ton of fun. I mean, that happened this morning. I wasn't in the mood to work out, but I just sucked it up and got it going anyway. And now I feel great. So anyway, I start with that. But then, there's always the possibility that your instructor is not good and you should move on. Where do you draw the line? Like, where do you decide the cost benefit analysis is not, doesn't favor sticking it out?
Yeah, that it seems like that can be part of the benefit of starting with, and I'm not trying to prescribe a worldview or morality to the person who wrote in or anything here.
Yes, you
but
are.
just
Do it, Jim. Give in to your anger.
For me, thinking of myself, I feel like for me personally, if I were to do that exercise of first going like, well, maybe it's me, like what can I do about my attitude or what I'm doing between lessons and stuff like that. And if I've addressed that, at least to some degree in my mind, and it still is not going well, then with even more security, I know it's just not working out with this instructor. I need a different instructor.
Here's a tip, it might even be a recommendation. Start seeing other instructors.
Yeah, and see how that goes, huh?
Yeah. An instructor is not a romantic partner where, at least in our culture, it's a huge faux pas to see multiple at the same time. Right? Well, actually, maybe it is.
Look, Andrew, players got to play, okay?
Yeah, it's got to play. But maybe it is a faux pas. Like, maybe you're not supposed to see other instructors because then you would offend your current one or something like that. But I think within reason, how about taking some lessons from another instructor? And then you could compare the two experiences.
Yeah.
And you might naturally gravitate towards the one whose style benefits you the most.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I mean, maybe does that make you disloyal? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, isn't it? But I don't think it does, though. I mean, I think a good instructor is somebody who wants you to be successful and happy and create music in your own unique voice. That's like a good instructor.
Yes.
And
totally.
so why would that person think you disloyal for taking some lessons with other people?
Right. A good instructor would be excited for you if you were getting benefit from that. Though I am having a lot of fun now, Andrew, imagining the getting caught cheating scene in a sitcom or a soap opera. But it's like you sit down for a lesson, they're like, wait, why did you start playing your F doublings like that? Where did you learn to do it that way?
Yeah.
Because the instructor knows that there's this other instructor across town that teaches F doublings in that way. It's like, you've been learning around, haven't you?
You've been learning around. Yeah. There you go. Learning around. Don't get caught. Don't get caught learning around.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that might be, that could be another podcast topic. But again, what's the cost benefit analysis of, being strictly loyal to one instructor forever? I mean, that sounds kind of rough. Even going back to the parenting, even as a parent, it's like, it's probably good for your kid to go out there and get coached by someone else every now and then. And to go to school, maybe, and have, exposure to different teachers and mentors and so on.
Yeah. I can definitely testify of that. Yeah,
Did you ever have a best friend when you were a kid, or know someone who did, and that person's best friend got extremely upset anytime the person hung out with anyone else ever.
Yeah, I had that.
Like that's a
experience
common
few
thing,
times.
right?
Yeah.
And so like maybe, I don't know, again, we shouldn't go into this because it's a different topic, but it's like, it seems kind of normal that there would be a little bit of apprehension when it comes to just getting some instruction from some other places. But I think that'd be really valuable.
Yeah.
And really kind of interesting.
Hey, one option for instruction from other places, Piper's Dojo.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we try. I mean, we're doing our very best to do lots of immersion, to have lots of fun, to balance hard work and having fun. But also, yeah, we try to offer a extremely various palette of different instructors and vibes and backgrounds and stuff like that. Yeah. But there you go, Jim. I don't know if we really solved the universe there today, but it was a good discussion.
Yeah, well, I think that's all it was. I think that's the only thing it could be, really, because, having a definitive answer on this, too many variables to know for sure. Right.
I do think fun is extremely important.
Yes.
So if you're not having it, you got to figure out how to have it. But does that mean, does that mean your instructor has to change, or does that mean you have to change? Or somewhere in between? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Hey, everybody. Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us. If you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that, your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.